Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, we are from Group 10. Today, me and my friend will discuss about our presentation of second ISAS. Before we start the presentation, we will introduce ourselves. My name is Ahmad Naufal Fadilah.
My name is Revino Redison.
My name is Arid Wipaman Hermawan.
Background. In the computers, we usually use consists of ports and software that have their own use. One of them is the input on and output port, which lets external devices connect to the computer or from the computer that gives a bridge to the computer. The typical device are keyboards, mice, audio controllers, video controllers, disk drives, networking ports, etc. This function usually used, but most don't know what they do besides giving connection. We choose this topic because there is still lack of knowledge of I/O system in Windows that's commonly used in everyday tasks. There is so much to know about the function inside the I/O as the development of gadget is also developing. The I/O also needs to keep up with these developments. The definition of I/O system. Input or output system is the component used to connect by the computer port between the hardware to the system to make the communication from external hardware usable to the system. The device that use the input function are a keyboard or computer mouse, while the output devices consist of monitor and printers. Devices for communication between computers, such as modems and network cards, typically perform both input and output operation. One of the important jobs of an operating system is to manage various I/O devices, including mouse, keyboards, touchpad, disk drives, display adapters, USB devices, bitmap screen, LED, analog to digital converter, on or off switch, network connection, audio I/O, printers, etc. Types of I/O system. I/O system is required to take an application I/O request and send it to the physical device. Then take whatever responses comes back from the device and send it to the application. I/O devices can be divided into two categories. First, devices. Block devices is one with which the driver communicates by sending entire block of data. For example, hard disk, USB cameras, disk on key, etc. Second, character devices. Character devices is one with which the driver communicates by sending receiving single characters bytes, uh, like bytes of tests. For example, serial ports, parallel ports, sound card, etc. Definition of computer ports. Computer ports is a connection point or interface between a computer and an external or internal device. Internal ports may connect such devices as hard drives and CD-ROM or DVD drives. External ports may connect modems, printers, mouse, and other devices.
Types of computer ports. Computer ports have numerous functions and connectors of varying designs. Types of computer ports include serial ports. These are most used for connection to mice and modems. Parallel ports. These are most used for printers. Small computer system interface (SCSI) ports. These are used to connect printers and up to 7 total devices, such as hard disks and tape drives, to the same port. They can use support higher data transmission speeds than serial or parallel ports. Universal Serial Bus (USB) ports, as the name implies, this can be connected to many devices, including all previously mentioned, plus keyboards, scanners, external hard drives, USB drives, also sometimes called thumb drives or portable USB drive, cameras, iPhone, and many other peripherals and devices. Device controllers is used. Drivers are software's module that can be plugged in into an OS to handle a particular device. Operating system takes help from device drivers to handle all I/O devices. The device controller works like an interface between a device and a device driver. I/O units, keyboards, mouse, printer, etc. typically consist of mechanical components and an electronic component, where electronic component is called device controller. There is always a device controller and a device driver for each device to communicate with the operating system. Explaining the structures of I/O memory map I/O. When using memory map I/O, the same address space is shared by memory and I/O devices. The device is connected directly to certain main memory locations so that I/O devices can transfer block of data to or from the memory without going through CPU. While using memory map I/O, OS allocates buffer in memory and informs I/O devices to use that buffer to send data to the CPU. I/O devices operates asynchronously with CPU, interrupt CPU when finished. DMA, direct memory access. Slow devices like keyboard will generate an interrupt to the main CPU after each byte is transferred. If a fast device such as a disk generated an interrupt for each byte, the operating system will spend most of its time handling these interrupts. So a typical computer uses direct memory access hardware to reduce this overhead. Direct memory access means CPU grants module authority to read from or write to memory without involvement. The MA model itself controls exchange of data between main memory and I/O device.
I/O system in Windows 10. The Windows 10 I/O system provides a layered driver model called stacks. Typically, RFPs go from one driver to another in the same stack to facilitate communication. For example, a joystick driver would need to communicate to a USB hub, which in turn would need to communicate to a USB controller, which would then need to communicate through a PCI bus to the rest of the computer hardware. The stack consists of joystick driver, USB hub, USB host controller, and the PCI bus. This this communication is coordinated by having each driver in the stack send and receive RIPS. How can the I/O system manage the function used for task? The I/O will use what's called the I/O manager. This will manage which programs to execute for the corresponding task. IO manager is the core of the IO system because it then defines the orderly framework or or model within which IO requests are delivered to device drivers. The IO system is packet driven. Most IO requests are represented by an IO request packet or RIP, which travels from one IO system component to another. The design allows an individual application thread to manage multiple IO requests concurrently. An RIP is a data structure that contains information completely describing an IO request. Conclusion: the IO system is integral part of all computer. This design describes the function and how the IO operates from the hardware and software. The focus of development is IO DMEA because this is the personal computer that manage I/O the most that the system does. But not forgetting the other process, there is still more ways for the I/O to operate. Uh,
That's it for our presentation. Thank you for hearing us. We will say salam from here. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh.
wabarakatuh.